Good evening, everyone. To open our meeting tonight, Chardell, will you please announce the first hymn?
Hymn number 347. Though mountains may depart from thee, and hills be far removed, his kindness shall remain with thee, his covenant be proved. Hymn number 347.
If you'd like to follow along with the readings tonight, please go to our website, and from the home page, you'll see the link to the live broadcast. Click on that, follow it through to the Wednesday testimony meeting, and there you'll find the text of the readings. And the theme for tonight is, When Love Alone is Given, There is No Offense Taken. And the readings will now be given by Dede from Georgia.
I will read from the Bible. Romans. Recompense to no man evil for evil. If it be possible, as much as lieth in you, live peaceably with all men. Therefore, if thine enemy hunger, feed him. If he thirst, give him drink. Be not overcome of evil, but overcome evil with good. Genesis. Now Israel loved Joseph more than all his children, because he was the son of his old age. And he made him a coat of many colors. And Joseph dreamed a dream, and he told it his brethren, and they hated him yet the more. And he said unto them, Hear, I pray you, this dream which I have dreamed. And his brethren said unto him, Shalt thou indeed reign over us? Or shalt thou indeed have dominion over us? And they hated him yet the more for his dreams and for his words. And his brethren went to feed their father's flock in Shechem. And Israel said unto Joseph, Do not thy brethren feed the flock in Shechem? Come, and I will send thee unto them. And he said to him, Go, I pray thee, see whether it be well with thy brethren, and well with the flocks, and bring me word again. And when they saw him afar off, they conspired against him to slay him. And they said one to another, Behold, this dreamer cometh. Come now, therefore, and let us slay him, and cast him into some pit. And we will say, Some evil beast hath devoured him, and we will see what will become of his dreams. And Reuben said unto them, Shed no blood, but cast him into this pit that is in the wilderness. And it came to pass, when Joseph was come unto his brethren, that they stripped Joseph out of his coat of many colors that was on him. And they took him and cast him into a pit. And they sat down to eat bread. And they lifted up their eyes and looked. And behold, a company of Ishmaelites came from Gilead. Then there passed by Midianites merchantmen. And they drew and lifted up Joseph out of the pit, and sold Joseph to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver. And they brought Joseph into Egypt. And they took Joseph's coat, and killed a kid of the goats, and dipped the coat in the blood. And they sent the coat of many colors, and they brought it to their father, and said, This have we found. And Jacob rent his clothes, and mourned for his son many days. And the Lord was with Joseph, and he was a prosperous man, and he was in the house of his master the Egyptian. And Joseph went up to bury his father, and with him went up all the servants of Pharaoh, the elders of his house, and all the elders of the land of Egypt. And when Joseph's brethren saw that their father was dead, they said, Joseph will peradventure hate us, and will certainly requite us all the evil which we did unto him. And they sent a messenger unto Joseph, saying, Thy father did command before he died, saying, So shall ye say unto Joseph, Forgive, I pray thee now, the trespass of thy brethren and their sin. And Joseph wept when they spake unto him. And his brethren also went and fell down before his face, and they said, Behold, we be thy servants. And Joseph said unto them, Fear not, for am I in the place of God? And he comforted them, and spake kindly unto them. We'll read correlative passages from Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures and Prose Works by Mary Baker Eddy. Jesus' last proof was the highest, the most convincing, the most profitable to his students. The malignity of brutal persecutors, the treason and suicide of his betrayer were overruled by divine love to the glorification of the man and of the true idea of God, which Jesus' persecutors had mocked and tried to slay. The final demonstration of the truth which Jesus taught and for which he was crucified opened a new era for the world. Those who slew him to stay his influence perpetuated and extended it. Jesus rose higher in demonstration because of the cup of bitterness he drank. Human law had condemned him, but he was demonstrating divine science. Out of reach of the barbarity of his enemies, he was acting under spiritual law in defiance of matter and mortality, and that spiritual law sustained him. The divine must overcome the human at every point. Love must triumph over hate. Truth and life must seal the victory over error and death before the thorns can be laid aside for a crown. The benedictions follow. Well done, good and faithful servant. And the supremacy of spirit be demonstrated. Judas had the world's weapons. Jesus had not one of them, and chose not the world's means of defense. He opened not his mouth. The great demonstrator of truth and love was silent before envy and hate. Peter would have smitten the enemies of his master, but Jesus forbade him, thus rebuking resentment or animal courage. He said, "Put up thy sword." The spirit of lies is abroad. Because truth has spoken aloud, error, running to and fro in the earth, is screaming to make itself heard above truth's voice. The audible and inaudible wail of evil never harms scientists, steadfast in their consciousness of the nothingness of wrong and the supremacy of right. Our worst enemies are the best friends to our growth. Charity students, for whom I have sacrificed the most time, those whose chief aim is to injure me, have caused me to exercise the most patience. When they report me as hating those whom I do not love, let them remember that there never was a time when I saw an opportunity really to help them and failed to improve it. And this too, when I knew they were secretly striving to injure me. There is immense wisdom in the old proverb, "He that is slow to anger is better than the mighty." Hannah More said, "If I wished to punish my enemy, I should make him hate somebody." To punish ourselves for others' faults is superlative folly. The mental arrow shot from another's bow is practically harmless unless our own thought barbs it. It is our pride that makes another's criticism rankle, our self-will that makes another's deed offensive, our egotism that feels hurt by another's self-assertion. Well may we feel wounded by our own faults, but we can hardly afford to be miserable for the faults of others. A courtier told Constantine that a mob had broken the head of his statue with stones. The emperor lifted his hands to his head, saying, "It is very surprising, but I don't feel hurt in the least." We should remember that the world is wide, that there are 1,000 million different human wills, opinions, ambitions, tastes, and loves, that each person has a different history, constitution, culture, character from all the rest, that human life is the work, the play, the ceaseless action and reaction upon each other of these different atoms. Then we should go forth into life with the smallest expectations, but with the largest patience, with a keen relish for and appreciation of everything beautiful, great, and good, but with a temper so genial that the friction of the world shall not wear upon our sensibilities, with an equanimity so settled that no passing breath nor accidental disturbance shall agitate or ruffle it, with a charity broad enough to cover the whole world's evil and sweet enough to neutralize what is bitter in it, determined not to be offended when no wrong is meant, nor even when it is, unless the offense be against God. Nothing short of our own errors should offend us. He who can willfully attempt to injure another is an object of pity rather than of resentment. While it is a question in my mind whether there is enough of a flatterer, a fool, or a liar to offend a whole-souled woman.
We will now have a moment of silent prayer and then follow by repeating together the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. We will now sing hymn number 179. Love one another, word of revelation. Love frees from error's thrall. Love is liberation. Love's way the Master trod. He that loves shall walk with God. Love is the royal way. Hymn number 179. welcome to the Plainfield Christian Science Church Independent. This is our weekly Wednesday evening testimony meeting for Wednesday, September 18th, 2019. Welcome one and all. All of our classes and services and meetings are broadcast live to the public through live streaming over the internet, through our website, as well as through our YouTube channel. People from all over the world have found our church, and we're thankful for each and every one of you who have done so. I would like to encourage everyone to browse through our website, plainfieldcs.com. We have quite a lot of wonderful material to offer, inspiring healing material for your reading, studying, listening, etc. And I'd like to point out a couple of items that we're now featuring, one of them being the most recent issue of Forum Highlights, and another one being an article entitled Spirit Blesses Your Experience by John Dorley. So if you were ever interested in learning about how much is waiting for you when you seek God with nothing reserved, that is, with this door wide open to all of His good, read this article. It explains it very clearly. Join us again on Sunday. We start on Sundays at 10 o'clock in the morning with our roundtable discussion, and we follow that with our church service at 11 o'clock. And on Sunday mornings, we also offer a Sunday school for children, which meets every Sunday at 11 a.m. And this Sunday school has its own teleconference, which means that your child can attend our Sunday school simply by picking up the phone and dialing the number. Call up the church, we'll give you the number for the Sunday school, and we would love to welcome your child there. We will be having another Bible study this Saturday at 10 o'clock in the morning. Check out the website for the Bible study questions. And one more announcement before we go on. We're going to have a meeting of our members Thursday of next week. That's September 26th. And it will start at 8 o'clock p.m. sharp. And for those of you who can't attend the meeting here in person in Plainfield, this meeting will go out over the teleconference. I will now read from the Church Manual by Mary Baker Eddy, the section entitled Testimonials. Glorify God in your body and in your spirit, which are God's, St. Paul. Testimony in regard to the healing of the sick is highly important. More than a mere rehearsal of blessings, it scales the pinnacle of praise and illustrates the demonstration of Christ, who healeth all thy diseases. This testimony, however, shall not include a description of symptoms or of suffering, though the generic name of the disease may be indicated. Now, for those of you who are going to give a testimony tonight, we kindly request that you keep it within 4 minutes. This will enable everyone the opportunity to share their offering. And for those of you who are on the teleconference, when you're ready to give a testimony, please press the star button twice on your telephone. However, keep in mind that when you do so, we're going to be able to hear you as well as any other sounds that your telephone picks up. So please be in a quiet place. And I will call on each of you one at a time by name. And our meeting tonight is now open for sharing testimonies of healing through Christian Science. Jeremy.
I am very grateful tonight that God brought me to Plainfield and has given me a purpose. When I first came to this church, I'd gone through a very difficult period in my life, and I figured that I would probably have to leave everything behind that I knew, since at the time it didn't seem any of it did me any good anyway. What an excellent surprise it was when I found that a great deal of the things I had learned actually had value here. God had apparently been preparing me my whole life to be here. And it wasn't that I needed to leave everything behind, but more like I needed to pick up everything good I'd been given and learn to apply it for the cause of Christian Science. I find it so fascinating that many little things come into play here, whether it is knowing when to use a semicolon or the love I have for driving. No matter how small it may seem, nothing of value has been lost in my transition to being a member of this church. Everything I felt inspired to learn or study along the way was for a reason, and it gives me such joy to see things I learned 20 or 30 years ago finally coming into focus for God and this church. We have such a wonderful God, and this life He has given is just amazing. I'm so grateful to Him and to this church and for practitioner support all along the way. Thank you.
Thank you. Barbara or Ken from Pennsylvania. Go ahead.
Hi. Today, in need of encouragement and inspiration, I turn to Plainfield's recorded instructional testimonies and listen to one after another. How very helpful they are. Thank you to all involved for this avenue of help among so many others. Thank you.
Thank you. Joanne from Florida. Go ahead. Your phone is on mute.
Thanks. Thank you. This week and next, my husband and I are here vacationing at the Jersey Shore. And every year we try to come up for a few weeks. And this year we wanted to include church in our visit. Before we came, we asked practitioner to pray for the harmony and blessing of our trip. One of the things she told us was to spiritualize it, to make sure our motive was right. That is, to spend the time growing closer to God. These first few days I had been feeling uneasy and tense and didn't know why. When I spoke to practitioner about it, she reminded me of my reason for this trip. Really any trip. She said to ask God what I needed to know and to keep at it until I got my answer. Well, I did, and I realized I had been thrown off balance by being in a new place, engrossed in the whole idea of vacation, and not spending enough time studying and just communing with God. God was trying to tell me this. After I spoke with the practitioner, I opened to No and Yes in Prose Works by Mary Baker Eddy and read and studied, and I found these two statements that really hit home with me. The first one was, God has appointed for Christian scientists high tasks and will not release them from the strict performance of each one of them. And the second one was, God must be found all instead of a part of being. I had put a shore vacation first instead of time with God, and these statements were exactly what I needed to hear from God. It gave me back my peace, my purpose, and my direction. I'm so grateful for the practitioner's help in getting me to see this. And thank you, Day Day, for those beautiful readings and also for this service, dear church. We are so grateful to be part of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Chardell.
Good evening. And yes, thank you for those readings and our hymns. I want to say how grateful I am for the teaching and the loving guidance here at Plainfield. Our practitioners have given a testimony which was spoken of already tonight, and it's found on the YouTube website. I was guided to one of them from last week's readings, and it's page 354 in Science and Health. I'll just read a little bit to remind you. A little more grace, a motive made pure, a few truths tenderly told, a heart softened, a character subdued. And I practiced with that, and will continue. And also, the other thing is, I wanted to say, everything that we're led to study, and that I'm led to study, has always been a very big blessing. And that was one of the things, to remember those readings. And also, I was reminded to look at and study some notes on True Vision by John L. Morgan once again. And I would like to share just a few things that have really helped me look at myself differently and the world. Through Spirit, I see all things rightly, clearly, correctly, distinctly, spiritually. And that's from one of the 7 synonyms, Spirit. And another one, just a little bit, from Truth. I love to practice seeing the truth, for true vision blesses both the seer and the seen. I judge or criticize no man, but allow truth to deal with error in God's own way. I thank our practitioners for their guidance and love, and for everything about this church. I am very grateful, and I'm grateful to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. David from Florida, go ahead.
When I went to bed, I started coughing, and for whatever reason, it wouldn't stop. As I lay there, I just started knowing that this is nothing but animal magnetism, error, trying to make me believe that there is a power apart from God that can affect my body and prevent me from getting rest. I kept knowing that God is in control and error is not. In a short time, the coughing stopped, and I went to sleep and had a good night's sleep. I know that this may sound like a small thing, but it is a proof of God's care and healing power, and that is never a small thing. I'm grateful to be a member of this church, for all that I have learned here over the years, and for the work of the practitioner. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, this is Bruce. I wanted to say thanks to Day Day to those fine readings. And she read excerpts from Mrs. Eddy's article, Taking Offense, which proved to be an incredibly helpful article for me. And I remember the first time that I ever read it. And it was at a time when I was with a group of other people. We were supposed to be working together, but it seemed like it proved to be a very contentious experience. Next thing you know, things started getting verbal, and accusational comments started getting thrown back and forth, and I was really disturbed. I kind of thank God I didn't say anything, because I think I had the good sense that I knew I didn't know what to say then. But I did go back home, and I pulled out my ProseWorks book and just opened to wherever it would have fallen. And I'm sure that God directed me to this article. And I read through the whole thing, and I could feel the pain in my neck melting away. And not only that, but there were a couple of points in here I found were very helpful. Like this one statement, the mental error shot from another's bow is practically harmless unless our own thought barbs it. And she goes on to describe, our pride, our egotism, and self-assertion that causes us to be in so much pain and suffering. But I went on and finished the article and just found it amazing. And something, I went back to the beginning and read it again. When I did that, I went back the third time and read the whole thing again. And every time I did, I felt immensely better and stronger and felt the power and presence of God with me. This is a very healing article. And the next time I was with those people working, there was absolutely no contention at all. It was a harmonious experience. I want to thank God. I want to thank our dear leader, Mary Baker Eddy, who put these words of wisdom down in her book for our benefit to read and study and benefit from. And I'll never forget that healing that I had that one day when I read this article, Taking Offense by Mary Baker Eddy. Thank you. Linda.
Thank you very much for the readings tonight. I want to express my gratitude for all that I'm learning from my Plainfield practitioner. She has been teaching me through healing and also by the things that she gives me to work with. Recently, a family member was moving to an apartment in a city. I was going to help where I could, and the practitioner is helping me keep my thought clear and on God during this whole process. I worked with one of the articles on our website titled Place by Mary Baker Eddy, and there were many lessons during this time that I was learning. I saw lots of things fall into place naturally when I put God first. And I'm very grateful for the many lessons I was learning about getting myself out of the way. The day of the move, I joined the Bible study first in the morning and said I would be available to help after that. Each step of the move was orderly, efficient, and calm. We found parking for 2 cars and a truck down a narrow city street. Later, several offhanded remarks from several different people that had lived in the area at one point or another said, "Oh, there's no parking in that place, ever." And I didn't even know we were going to have that challenge, but it wasn't a challenge, actually. It was beautiful. And the 2 roommates that were moving in didn't have much time to plan for this or money to spend, and were not really coordinating this move together, but somehow beautifully God worked, and they both brought items that the other didn't. It was really almost just, it was just so amazing. It was beautiful to see the one mind at work. And then at the end, we were able to get out of the city and on our way smoothly, even though we didn't know the area. I'm very grateful that many needs were met without even knowing there were going to be these needs, and how truth works so deeply and thoroughly in our lives, and the promise in the Bible that says God will perfect that which concerneth me. I'm very grateful to be here tonight. I'm very grateful for Christ Jesus and Mrs. Eddy's and all that she sacrificed to give us this science. And again, I'm always very grateful for this church in continuing on her true science. Thank you.
Thank you. Luba from Ohio, go ahead.
I'm so grateful for all that Plainfield provides, and I'm especially grateful to my very patient and loving practitioner who has stayed with me throughout a renovation in my home throughout this summer. I'm so grateful for her guidance and keeping me on the right track in my thinking, never forgetting that God is governing all. Thank you so much, Day, for tonight's relevant reading, and I'm very happy to be here this evening.
Thank you. Gary.
I am so grateful for Mary Baker Eddy for discovering this science and then persevering to give it to the world, to give it to all mankind. Christian Science is not just another religion. It is the scientific truth about God and man, and about man's relationship with our Maker. She writes in our textbook, the science of mind disposes of all evil. Elsewhere she writes, truth decapitates error. And I think this is why Christian Science is so comforting to me. There are a lot of religions that theorize about God and truth, but Christian Science heals by leading us directly to God and taking care of whatever needs to be taken care of. Since joining this church, I have had many issues, many problems, health, financial, character, healed through Christian Science treatment, and many times with the help of a Christian Science practitioner in this church. And the wonderful thing about it, in addition to the healings, each healing has brought me closer to God and has given me a firmer foundation for my life. I'm so grateful to Mary Baker Eddy. In the face of tremendous opposition, she has given us an incredible science, a wonderful way of life. I'm so grateful for all the teaching I've received in this church and for all the help I've received from practitioners in this church. And it's so good to be with everyone here tonight.
Thank you. Amanda from Missouri, go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Day, thank you so much for tonight's readings. So many beautiful statements were read. And tonight I share my gratitude for an example of God's protection that happened a little while ago in our subdivision. One of our neighbors had noticed a small water leak on the street and called the water company to come check it out. And they concluded that there was a small leak that needed to be repaired, but it seemed quite minor and not a big deal. So the morning that the repair was being made, I could see the water trucks from one of my windows as I was getting ready for work and didn't think too much of it. I had been running late for work that morning, so I remember feeling a little irritation when I heard a very loud and persistent knocking at the door. And to my surprise, it was a man from the fire department who said that the men digging to repair the water line had just struck a gas line, and he needed to come in right away to check for gas in our house to determine if we had to evacuate. And several other houses on the street were in the process of being evacuated, including a house where other family members live. And I was extremely grateful that our house was declared safe, which was a tremendous blessing because we weren't able to start cars with the gas issue. And I was able to stay with our pets and also have a place for evacuated family members to come and stay. And also thankful I was home and knew to pray about the situation so that I could pray. And while the scene looked rather chaotic when looking out the window because the street was essentially on lockdown with fire truck and police cars and other utility vehicles, everybody was so very calm. And all repairs were made safely within a few hours, and things were quickly back to normal by the afternoon. But it wasn't until later that day that I learned of the overall severity of the situation and protection to the workers that had transpired. And apparently years ago, utility lines were buried underground on our street that were way too close together and not properly marked. And this is what caused the water guys to hit other lines. And when this happened, I also wasn't aware at the time that they apparently hit electricity, and there was a small visible explosion that our neighbor had witnessed. And the workers, even though standing down in a trench where the water was, were completely fine throughout all of this. And because this had happened and was discovered, the problem with these lines was remedied so that they could be arranged in a better order and marked properly. In the days before this had happened, I had been praying with the idea of hidden things, that nothing that needed to be fixed or remedied could stay hidden, and that the light of God, of truth, went to every dark corner, whether it would seem to be in a person or a body or anywhere. And the Bible in 1 Corinthians says, this is a paraphrase, not a quote, but that the Lord will bring to light the hidden things of darkness. And while at the time my thought was in no way directed towards the situation on the street because I had no idea it was a problem, And in fact, I hadn't wanted to report the leak because it was providing water to the birds. But it was something that needed to be fixed. And just as promised, this problem was revealed and remedied safely. I was so grateful once I learned about this and extremely moved by the protection for all of the workers involved. I thank the discoverer and founder of Christian Science, Mary Baker Eddy, for her revelation that is blessing all mankind. I'm very thankful for this church, our members, and our incredibly dedicated practitioners. Thank you. Good night.
Lil.
Thank you for those really wonderful readings. I've had many wonderful blessings in all parts of my life since coming to this independent Christian Science church, which have included health, employment, apartments, relationships, just everything. Thanks to God and practitioner support. I was remembering with great gratitude an employment situation that I was healed of several years ago. My job had been terminated, and I found a company with a temporary position which could provide other temporary assignments. I also left an application at a large nearby company for a permanent position. After about 6 months, there were no more temporary assignments. Just then, the company with the permanent position called me to interview. I was offered the position and accepted. This was not luck. It was a proof of God's dear love. All my needs have been met through God's love and strong practitioner support here. And I am just so grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. Sharon.
Last week I came down with a headache, and I thought, this isn't from God. And then part of a statement from Science and Health by Mary Baker Eddy came to me that matter can't ache, swell, or become inflamed. And I thought about that for a minute, and I realized it was Wednesday, and this was just opposition to the service. I'm so grateful for what I've learned in this church, because I would never have realized what error was trying to do and stopped it in its tracks. Immediately, the headache was gone. I'm so grateful for all the teaching I've had in this church, the healings, Mary Baker Eddy, practitioner help, and for the readings tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Florence from Georgia, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Dede, for those pertinent readings. I've learned a lot from that, what you read from. I'm very grateful tonight that I learned much early in my study of Christian Science that purification of thought is certainly one of the most essential disciplines if I wanted to be free. Mrs. Eddy tells us in Treatment for Every Day, it's an article on our website, that, quote, when I cease to judge, criticize, or condemn, I begin to make progress. I found it very difficult over the years to obey this instruction, because what was tempting often was a behavior, someone's behavior. With practitioner help, and I will list these particular resources that made a difference for me. The first one was Love Your Enemies in Miscellaneous Writings. Taking Offense, that which was read from tonight on page 223 of miscellaneous writings. Ways That Are Vain, Miscellany 210. And Herbert Eustace's book, Christian Science is Clear, Correct Teaching, on page 91 of the section entitled, Whoso Readeth, Let Him Understand. All these resources have been tremendous help. Those plus prayer and application of what these resources revealed really has helped a replacement of love, divine love. It has replaced all the anxiety, sadness, frustration, resentment, and anger, which I always did have as a response to this particular behavior. This I call is my freedom. It gave me my freedom, obeying and applying what these resources have taught. I am so grateful for all the instructions that we are given from these. And certainly from hymn 179, we see all the good things that love is doing and has done, and why seeking and finding it is worth every striving tear. I'm so grateful for the examples of Christ Jesus, some of the things that the Bible stories tell us, Mrs. Eddy herself, what she went through, and for the opportunity to learn and practice this wonderful way of life. Thanks for all the testimonies thus far. I'm so grateful to be here tonight.
Mary.
I'll read a couple of things from our church website bulletin board. The first, Georgia, someone thanking Parthens for an article he found about character by Mrs. Eddy. And this person says, thanks to Parthens for finding this wonderful reminder to build character. It appears that what gets more notice these days, here and around the world, is how much material wealth one has. This is enticing young people away from the values of living closer to the Christly model. The address makes these remarkable points. 1. Here in this world and in all worlds swinging in space, nothing is so grand, so godlike as character. And then 2. This is what Christian Science exists for, to promote every worthy and spiritual effort to attain unto a higher realization of what character surely is. What is called the Christian Science healing is not the end-all and be-all of Christian Science teaching. Praying more to be able to follow what our leader is saying would make us all more like our true selves. It would keep us abiding in the secret place of the Most High, and in so doing, help us to be the expression of the one mind. The one mind would in turn enable us to benefit more from what it means to be a child of God, with all the preventative as well as the curative blessings. So grateful for this timely reminder, and sincere thanks for sharing it. And then from Florida, my husband and I have been enjoying your Sunday services online. Thank you for the beautiful readings, inspirational hymns, and wonderful special music. Amazing Grace brought a tear of gratitude as I listened to the live performance at your church last week. This Sunday's music was lively and melodious. Thank you to all. And then this is a little note from someone in California. I am grateful for what I am learning at your church. It certainly is a thinker's church. I've received profound insights, clarifications, explanations, and answers to long-term questions. I'm so impressed with this church's daily involvement with the world issues and individual needs. In addition, I am so blessed with practitioner support. And this one from England, just a line to thank you very much for the roundtable discussions, which are always very helpful. In a session a few weeks ago about soul, it was mentioned something to the effect that we would all become more appreciative of our God-given surroundings as we progress. I have always been most grateful for our small home being on the edge of a countryside area with so much of nature to see, but I have more recently noticed and appreciated more the beauty of the sky and cloud formations, which has been such a joy. Sending much love to you all at Plainfield, with gratitude for your dedication. And this is someone new from France. Christian Science came into my life after a complete return to God, having had significant health problems. I was diagnosed with a neurological disease that affects the nervous system, and I received heavy treatment for the doctors. My wife, who is very religious, helped me through prayer to get out of the hospital. We moved to a quiet place, and I could finally come back to God, and I should even say to discover God. I began to study science and health with key to the scriptures and the Bible. I humbly realized in my life the greatness of God and of Christ Jesus. I immersed myself in prayer for my loved ones and sick people. In France, the contacts with Christian Science were particularly complicated. The practitioner I was working with strongly insisted that I follow the instructions, but did not help me to understand Christian Science. So I searched and realized that the practitioner was part of the Boston organization. For my part, I want to get involved and learn Christian Science at the Plainfield Christian Science Church Independent, and not follow the choices of the Boston Board of Directors. I think that first of all, we must respond to God, looking daily at the writings of Mary Baker Eddy in the Bible. I wish to study Christian Science in the Plainfield Church, and I would like to devote myself to it in my daily life. I read the lesson in the morning on the website in French, which is a very happy and very rewarding moment. I want to express my great gratitude to you all. So I'm grateful for our translators who help these dear people. And we have, I know, Suzanne faithfully translating in French every week, as well as Bertrand in Paris, who does the audio. If you don't think you're making a huge helpful effort in this cause, you certainly are. We're so grateful to all of you who do this very important work. I too am very grateful for Day Day's readings tonight. They were so beautiful. I remember it wasn't all that long ago when someone I was close to, it wasn't an attack on me, but someone I was close to, he was threatened with a lawsuit. And it was so unjust, it was so unfounded, and I really just became enraged. I was surprised at myself, and I felt like my thought was just galloping. And I was thinking of all the things I was going to say to this person and all the things I was going to do to this person and how dare he do this. And if it weren't for dear Mrs. Eddy and certainly the selections that Day Day read from tonight in taking an offense by Mrs. Eddy, and the other one that was also mentioned is to love your neighbor and have no enemies by Mrs. Eddy. I am so grateful for those articles. They are what kept me from going berserk, really. I studied them every morning for, must have been a few weeks. And each time I read them and studied and prayed, my thought became calmer and clearer. And I was healed of that really hateful sense, which certainly should be no part of anyone, and I certainly didn't want it to be part of me because it is so ungodlike. Yes, in the name of the article, Love Your Enemies, in Miscellaneous Writings, it's actually the third article Mrs. Eddy wrote, and such a beautiful and important one because she lived all those words. And on page 10 she writes, "We have no enemies. Whatever envy, hatred, revenge, the most remorseful motives that govern mortal mind, whatever these try to do, shall work together for good to them that love God. Why? Because he has called his own, armed them, equipped them, and furnished them defenses impregnable. Their God will not let them be lost, and if they fall, they shall rise again, stronger than before the stumble. The good cannot lose their God, their help in times of trouble. If they mistake the divine command, they will recover and countermand their order, retrace their steps, and reinstate his orders, more assured to press on safely. The best lessons of their lives is gained by crossing swords with temptation, with fear, and the besetments of evil, insomuch as they thereby have tried their strength and proven it, insomuch as they have found their strength made perfect in weakness, and their fear is self-immolated." So I'm so grateful for that wonderful reminder, and there was a great healing in this problem that I mentioned because nothing ever came to pass. It just dissipated as I got my thought right and realized we are all God's children, and it's my responsibility to see that and not to react. I'm so grateful for dear Mrs. Eddy for all that she has given us for this independent church and to be here tonight.
Thank you. To close our meeting tonight, Linda, will you please announce the last hymn?
Hymn number 266. Our God is love, and all his sons his image bear, we know. The heart with love to God inspired, with love to man will glow. Hymn number 266.